convened here at 7:34 p.m. Welcome to the first WebEx version of the Transportation Advisory Commission. Entering the 21st century with a bang here. Kelvin and Tanya, Mike, of course, really appreciate your efforts here, Brent, to help us put this together. What I'll do here is we'll go through the roll call first, go through the intro. It's pretty similar to what we had before, but we'll go ahead and get started. What we're going to do is take roll, make sure we're all here, that we can all connected, and then that we need to have this meeting electronically. So let me go ahead. Mary Pauline, are you ready to do the back and forth here on the script?
Yes. I'm ready on that.
Well, we'll sort of skate through the best we can. Good evening, fellow commissioners and the general public. My name is Mike Champness. I'm the chair of the Transportation Advisory Commission. Before we begin, please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the committee website and YouTube. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by new state legislation and FOIA, the Transportation Advisory Commission needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. It's a bit cumbersome, so I ask you in advance for your patience. First, because each member of the commission is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all the other members. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Brandon, if you could take the agenda off screen now, so as we go through the roll call. I'm asking each commissioner member participating in this meeting to state your name and location from which you're participating when I mention your name. At large, Linda Sperling. I hear noises. No?
Eric Thiel, Springfield District.
Okay. All right. I tell you what, we'll come back to Linda. I thought I saw her dial on. But Braddock District, Kevin Morse.
Present from the Braddock District.
Thank you. Glacial District, Mike Champness. I am here in McLean. Hunter Mill is vacant. Mason District, our recording secretary, Roger Hoskin.
I am present in historic Falls Church, Virginia.
Roger Hoskin is here. Mount Vernon District, Pete Sitnick.
Pete Sitnick, I'm here and I'm in Mount Vernon District.
Fantastic. Lead District, our new member, Alexis Glenn.
Alexis Glenn is here in Alexandria.
Fantastic. Glad you could join us. Pleased to meet you. Providence District, Jeremy Hancock.
Jeremy Hancock in Falls Church.
Okay, fantastic. Good to see you, Jeremy. Springfield, Eric Thiel.
I'm here.
Okay, that is absolutely you. Southern District, David Skiles. Okay. And our Disability Services Board member and Vice Chair of the Commission, Mary Pauline Jones.
I am here from my home in the historic town of Herndon.
Fantastic, fantastic. Linda Sperling, I'll move back. Are you here yet, or?
I am. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you and we can see you.
Wonderful. Hello. I am here in Clifton, Virginia. Not the historic Clifton, Virginia, just Clifton.
Okay. Yeah, don't jump to conclusions there. Okay. So at this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to Vice Chair Mary Pauline Jones so that I may be heard to make the requisite motions.
Thank you. I accept the virtual gavel. I now recognize Commissioner Champness.
Thank you. I move that we have determined that each member's voice can be adequately heard by each other member of the commission. It is so moved.
You have heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who seconded that. Was that Roger?
Yes.
Okay. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Mr. Chairman, the motion is carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. I next move the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this commission to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting. I further move that this commission may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by WebEx online platform by calling 1-415-655-0001 or another number and entering the appropriate access code. The phone number for ADA is 711. Access information is also available at the TAC website. It is so moved.
Is there a second?
Second, that's Pete from Mount Vernon.
Thank you, Pete. Is there a discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Mr. Chairman, the motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. Finally, I move that all of the matters on the agenda previously furnished and published, posted on the TAC website are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government and/or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations in the discharge of the Commission's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. Mr. Jones.
You have heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Roger. Is there a discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstention? Mr. Chairman, the motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. We will now start the tax business agenda for the approved agenda. And 7:40, so that's not too bad. It only took us about 6 minutes. That's not too bad. We're getting better at this. I don't want to take too much time for remarks right now because we'll have plenty of opportunity to discuss things later. I very much appreciate folks' willingness, maybe enthusiasm might be a better word, to do this in a virtual way. And so very glad we can do this. Even though we've mentioned her a couple times, I'm going to give an official TAC welcome to our new commissioner, Alexis Glenn. She comes to us from the Lee district. Alexis, welcome you to, a couple remarks to introduce yourself a little bit. I know that you haven't met too many people here, although I know you know a few folks. We'll have opportunities later to get to meet. In fact, we'll talk about a possible holiday activity near the end of the meeting. So, but Commissioner Glenn, welcome. And if you'd like to say some remarks, the floor is yours.
I just want to say thank you so much, and I'm excited to work with you all. And thanks for putting up with my spirit animal back there behind me.
There we go.
Yes.
There we go.
So I'm looking forward to all the good work.
Okay.
All right, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to thank welcome our guests as well. We have some folks from FCDOT, obviously Calvin, who's here all the time, whether he wants to or not, although I'm sure he can think of nothing better to do on a Tuesday evening. Nicole, thank you for joining us as well. Dale Caslow, I see you're here. Thank you. Etta Napetian, I've never quite been able to pronounce your name. I apologize, but I recognize it on site. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pretty good.
Yes, John Zarba, I don't think we had the chance to meet, but welcome here. Thanks again. And Brent and Tanya, really appreciate you providing support and keeping us on track here. Are there any other guests here? I think one of the advantages we have with WebEx is it's really tough to ghost on this thing. So if you're in, we'll see you there, and that's all the names I see. So unless there's some technology quirk here that I'm not aware of, I think that's everybody. But is there anybody lurking in the background that would like to announce themselves now?
Mr. Chairman, we have 4 staff is listening at the attendees. I don't think that there's any people at this meeting. We have Anna, we have Chris Well, we have John Ashwood, and Sam Hussein. I think there's our FCDOC staff, except for John. I'm not sure if he is.
Okay. Are they listening in on a phone line then, perhaps?
They joined at the attendees, so you will not see, you probably don't see it under the panel list, but you might.
Okay.
Yeah.
Calvin, unfortunately, your voice is breaking up a little bit, but I think I understand what I would ask, please, if you could capture those names for the meeting minutes, so we know who's all here.
I will. Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Okay, it's now time to move on to the acceptance of the September 15th meeting minutes. We did send them out here earlier this afternoon. I'm going to try and start doing them sooner. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the procedures. One thing I will just mention is that, as you know, this meeting is being taped, but they also have transcripts. And so what we're going to look at is maybe it's easier to use the transcripts as a foundation for the meeting minutes. We ran a test, connection test for a WebEx last week. We're going to use that and the results here to see if that might be a feasible way of doing things. In the meantime, we have the meeting minutes. Eric, thanks so much for putting together here this last month. I guess I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved, Braddock.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Is there a second for that? Nobody wants to approve the minutes?
I'll second.
Thank you.
We all have to unmute.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Your first official act, Alexis. Thank you. Now that there's been a motion on the floor and seconded to approve the September 15th minutes, is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, I'll put the question to the members of the TAC. All those in favor of approving the September 15th meeting minutes as produced, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the meeting minutes are approved unanimously.
Mike, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just for the minutes, earlier you recognized people, but you didn't say that where they were from, and I don't know whether Linda knows them or not for the minutes.
Good point. I say we can certainly follow up with that. I know that, well, certainly some of the folks that I identified are on our agenda, of course, and their affiliations are on the agenda. The folks
Okay.
that I mentioned, I do not know. John, I'll have to admit, I'm not sure where you're associated with, but we can hunt you down and find that out, or send an email and track that down. But you're right, of course, Kevin. We do need.
Good.
Thanks, Kevin.
He's actually a pretty good note taker. He doesn't like people to know that because he's afraid to have to do it all the time. And don't worry, he won't. But
No, that's let's not start off the meeting with misinformation there, Michael.
why not? That's it. I'm going to stop right there. I'm not going to say anything else. Okay, I won't. Okay. Well, we've gotten through the opening activities here. Now we're on to the meat of the meeting. We're very fortunate this evening to have two important presentations here. The first is the active Fairfax transportation plan. And I was very pleased the way this came about on the agenda, because not only did the interest from this come from FCDOT itself, reached out to Calvin to let them know that they had a deadline coming up and wanted to come see us, but also one of our commissioners, Commissioner Hancock, was aware enough of the situation to also approach me about it and say, this is a topic we need to discuss. And it shows that there's at least two and maybe other ways to get topics on the agenda. In this case, the system worked great. Everybody's aware, and this is clearly an important topic because I know there's some decisions that are coming up. So we're very pleased to put this on the agenda. Nicole, I'll turn this over to you to go through your slides. We're very looking forward to this, and I appreciate you taking the time to come talk with us this evening.
Well, thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm very pleased speaking with you about the active Fairfax transportation project. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see how this works. All right. Okay. Can you now see my screen? Or do you also see something to the side?
Well, we see a slide and the next slide. So try not to peek ahead, everybody.
All right. Now, do you know what I need to do to see it completely?
Nicole, you hit the slideshow.
Slideshow.
Yeah.
Which button is it?
If you look up on the PowerPoint, where it says slideshow, and the very top says file, home, insert, and then you see slideshow. And then you can click from beginning.
I'm already in that, so it's showing some sort of guide presenter view. There we go. Does that work?
Yeah, that should work. That should work.
Do you see the actual presentation though?
Yes, and then hit slideshow on the top.
Slideshow. Resume slideshow. Let's see how it does the same thing. Sorry about that.
No worries.
No, it doesn't do it at all.
When you click slideshow right there, resume slideshow, that doesn't work.
No, I think it's doing the slideshow. But you see the actual PowerPoint, like I'm not actually doing the slideshow. Maybe I can just zoom in. Can you see it okay though?
We can all zoom in on our own screen, so you can go ahead and go through that and we can zoom in ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, because unfortunately you've cut off the top of the slide now by zooming in.
Okay. But you don't see your camera images here? To the right? Okay, maybe I just see those.
Well,
So
we see the each of the individual slides because you can tell we can tell you're in PowerPoint. So
Okay.
we can see your slide lineup, but this is okay, and appreciate you willing to be a guinea pig, our first presentation with the system. So
right.
I think you're going to take a little bit of working through. So no, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nicole, this is Brent. I'm sorry. Did you click the slideshow icon at the bottom down where the size, of the screen is?
Yes, it believes it is already in slideshow, so nothing happens.
Oh, that's weird. Okay.
Yeah, it's strange, but hopefully this will work. So let me go through my slides. All right, so let me introduce myself since not all of you know me. My name is Nicole Winans. I work with FCDOT in the active transportation team. I'm an active transportation planner. I'm leading the bike program, but also working on pedestrian issues, particularly from the comprehensive planning side. So I'm the project manager for the active transportation plan, and I'm excited to speak to you today, hear your feedback, questions. I think this is the first time we're presenting on this project in front of this committee. And this may be an FCDOT-led effort, but it's it's really truly a multi-agency effort. We are working across the county departments on this process, and also we want to integrate committees like yours. We're also working, of course, with the Trails, Sidewalks, and Bikeways Committee and other similar committees that the county has to help guide policy. So hopefully this will not be my only presentation in front of you, but this is a start to kind of get you some background information on this project. It's about a 2-year, 3-year effort. We're only partly funded so far, just for the first phase of gathering data and doing some initial outreach. So we're really early on in the process. Let's go to slide 2. All right. So the stepping one step further back, why are we doing this project? So we have multiple comprehensive planning guidance or recommendations for active transportation. Most notably, there's a countywide trails plan, which was first adopted in the 70s and has been changed here and there in the past. The last update was in 2018, but it's still pretty intact from the original vision. The small edits that have been made really left us still with a pretty comprehensive trail system, which is fairly unique, even in the United States, and really a treasure that we are trying to maintain throughout this process. Then we have the Bicycle Master Plan, which was adopted in 2014. You may be more familiar with that. So that plan included on-street bicycle infrastructure as well as trails. So those are the two big plans that are countywide that have sometimes conflicting guidance about what type of facility should be built along a road by development or capital projects or by VDOT. And then on top of that, we have area plans for each activity center in the county. And each area plan also provides bicycle and pedestrian facility recommendations, which sometimes adds a third layer of a third facility that is recommended for the same corridor. So a top goal here is to look through all these plans and merge them together so that our developers and our engineers and planners get the facility right. To have only one facility to choose from that should go there, so we don't have to guess which one is the best one to implement at the time, because all of the plans at this point outdated as well. So having an update to the network every 5 years is really crucial to keep up with best practices. So there's a new AASHTO guide coming out. We're using AASHTO basically as our engineering Bible when we design facilities. You're probably already familiar with that. But if you're not, it describes how wide, for example, a shared use path should be, what type of curb ramps to use, what design speed a facility should have, how wide a bike lane should be. And there's a new guide coming out next year, which will drastically change how these facilities are engineered and recommended what type of facilities should be provided to accommodate particularly bicyclists appropriately in the new century, basically. So we now know that cyclists want to prefer to be off-street for the most part, not necessarily the experienced cyclists or road cyclists that you see out there, but the general public. 60% of the general public feel more comfortable riding on off-street facilities that are separated from traffic. So our current comprehensive planning guidance does not quite reflect that yet. So this is something we want to address through this project. Then we have, as I said, trail and bike specific recommendations, and some limited pedestrian recommendations just in activity centers, which are developed through the planning department. But we don't have countywide guidance on, for example, how many crosswalks should be at an intersection. So some basic information like that is currently missing in our comprehensive plan. And even though we have internally in project design made these recommendations, we didn't have a policy to point at particularly when we coordinate with VDOT. So this is something we want to integrate to make that effort easier. So there, and in the past we have provided some guidance on what type of facilities, but not necessarily what happens at the intersections in general, or how comfortable are these facilities to ride on. So we're looking at comfort from how wide is the buffer from the street, but not necessarily shade and lighting of these facilities. So walking down the street along one of our typical corridors, it's not a particularly pleasant experience. So having that conversation as part of this process is very important. And then also we had some recent guidance that came from the countywide strategic plan that really emphasized that active transportation needs to be improved, and it's really part of everything the county does. I mean, it's part of the economic development and health, affordable housing. So it reaches in all these different areas. Here's some of our project goals. As I mentioned, we want to reconcile all these different plans that are currently out there and make sure they are matching and talking to each other. We want to, of course, also make sure that our system connects to our neighboring jurisdictions. So we know, for example, that the city of Fairfax is currently developing a new bicycle master plan. So we need to coordinate to make sure that our recommended facilities and routes connect to theirs. Then, as I mentioned, we have a really comprehensive trail network, but there are new destinations or new origins, new developments, or it's just something that hasn't been a priority in the past that still needs to be addressed, like particular connections to schools and parks. We had a lot of focus on connecting to transit, particularly metro transit, but there are also a lot of bus stops that we need to ensure that we are connecting to. So we're looking for missing links in the network that we can address through this effort. And I mentioned the bringing out the network, the planned facilities up to current standards. And something new to FCDOT is something called placemaking. And this is really an effort that's driven by Rachel Flynn, our Deputy County Executive, who has a strong urban design background and sees well-designed, comfortable bicycle and pedestrian facilities as part of creating an economically viable and recognizable space that attracts businesses and residents. And that's part of the placemaking goals that the county has currently.
We know her very well. She's come to a number of our meetings, and we're aware of this, so that's good to hear. And she'll be glad to know that the message is received and integrated. She's not surprised, I'm sure, but very good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm thank you for the update. That's great to hear that she's. I'm not surprised. And she definitely also recommended working closely with your commission on some of these issues. So and also we want to ensure through this part of this project that one size doesn't fit all. So that we look at Fairfax County as the urban areas, the suburban areas, and the rural areas, and that we provide this context-sensitive street design that is really unique to the areas. So one thing about AASHTO, for example, is that it provides a minimum standard, but the minimum standard may not be sufficient for an urban area, and it may not quite apply to a suburban area either. And then the rural area has its own needs because they would like to maintain their rural context. So those are things we will work through. And one way to achieve that is to develop an active transportation toolkit that looks at the different land use context, and then what kind of road volumes, traffic volumes there are, and speeds, and comes up with unique. Not unique, but it basically is a part of a spreadsheet, what type of active transportation facility is appropriate or ideal for that area, instead of saying a trail should go everywhere or bike lanes should go everywhere. Depending on the context, it can be designed to fit quite well. And as part of this project, we are developing a pedestrian safety plan. That is not part of the comprehensive planning effort. This is a separate effort, which is, let's say, inspired by Vision Zero. So we don't use the term Vision Zero. We call it a systematic safety action plan, which basically is the same as a Vision Zero action plan without using the branding. So this effort has already started, and it's definitely a high priority for the Board of Supervisors right now. And the plan we will be able to finish as part of this first funded phase. So that would be something that we will have available in late spring to continue working on. So it's going to be more of a working plan that will help us reduce the number of road fatalities and injuries among all the modes in Fairfax County. And also not necessarily part of the comprehensive plan update is we're already in the process of analyzing local and state policies, such as the Code of Virginia or the Fairfax County Code, the Public Facility Manual, just do a comprehensive scan of what is currently on the books and what could be improved, what's the strength of these for active transportation, and on the contrary, what is, what could be made, what could be changed in order to make it easier to provide a convenient, comfortable, and safe active transportation environment in Fairfax County. And this whole project has a very strong equity focus. So having not just a lot of outreach or public meetings, but very targeted outreach to the hard to reach, which we know are our vulnerable road users, the most affected by injuries and fatalities, but they're not necessarily the people we usually see at our meetings. So, and in COVID time, it's specifically challenging to reach those communities that are most at risk. So we're working with the county's equity specialists, and we're also going to work with an equity advisory group to help us make sure that our process is equitable, our outreach is equitable, and also the recommendations down to funding recommendations, that there is this equity lens throughout the process. So we're also working with the One Fairfax project manager, who is part of our outreach working group. And last but not least, at the end of this process, we are hoping to update the comprehensive plan guidance with the new network, but also some of the pedestrian design standards, so we have it in our policy. And we have hired Alta Planning and Design and ACOM to help us with this effort. So they, we are under contract with them, and we had our kickoff meeting last July. So they're currently working on putting the first pieces in place. And here's our project schedule. So you can see that we started the project management part and existing condition analysis in July. And we are currently finishing up the policy and plan audit, which is kind of like leading up to a public launch in late October. Will be just a soft launch with a website, but then a big splash public launch where we really are starting our public outreach in a more targeted way. We will do that after the election in November, because we know right now there's a lot going on between COVID and schools and the election that we are waiting after that. So we're currently working on project logo and branding, as well as a strategic plan, outreach plan, a community engagement plan. So we're taking the time to go through that to make sure we get it right, particularly under the current circumstances. And we are working closely with neighborhood community services on that, because they have a lot of boots on the ground already in the communities that we're trying to serve or focus on through this planning process. So that's a great partnership. And as you can see at the bottom here, we have started working on the systematic safety action plan this month, and that should be completed by the end of April. The next steps just coming up is, as I mentioned, the public website will launch. So right now you will not find anything on our website related to this. So we're still that new in the process, but we're in the process of finalizing the draft, and it should go live hopefully in the next week or two. We are working on the systematic safety action plan and the public engagement. And thank you again for having me today, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you, Nicole. Really appreciate the presentation here. What I like to try and do this in a normal meeting, raise your hands and things like that. I like to allow commissioners to just ask questions, try to talk over each other. Someone, Roger's got his hands, so let him start. And
I got, this is a question for Nicole, and it's also a question for everybody in the pack. What is the objective of a bike and trails path? Is it recreational, or is it to be commuters, or both? And I know in Arlington we have these trails around here, and boy, there are a fair number of commuters. I know they're commuters on these trails. Is that kind of how much of a proportion of your objective is using it as a commuting medium?
So in the past,
from metros and stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, in the past, the focus of active transportation was certainly the commuter, particularly the commuter trying to reach the metro by bike or by walking. This has changed recently, so we're now looking comprehensively at including commuting, but also daily errands, biking or walking to the store or to your house of worship or to the park. which is it's still a type of commute or utilitarian active transportation, but not necessarily your long distance commuter. But then also recent studies have shown that 80% of active transportation users are actually recreational users, particularly in bicycling, that just go for a joyride and they have no destination. So there's not really a transportation factor per se, but they're still users of our facilities. So this plan takes this comprehensive look at we need to serve the commuters, the long distance commuters or transit commuters, but we also need to focus and encourage those shorter distances, those short distance trips that can be converted, take cars off the road, but also having a healthier lifestyle and making it possible to actually walk or bike to the park safely or to school. And then actually in the current trails plan, there are purely recreational trails already included. So there are hiking trails and equestrian trails on there, and that will remain. So we are working with Bill Niederinghaus, in particular, who you may be familiar with. He's a community activist, I would say, or expert for hiking trails. And he is developing these regional trail networks in Fairfax County that are purely for hiking. And we make sure that he's integrating that part, as FCDOT is not necessarily an expert in these type of recreational trails. And of course, we're working with the Park Authority, as well as the Nova Parks and the National Park Service on their trail networks. We're not going to plan their recreational trails because they have their own process. But in some cases, there are what we call transportation trails or more regional connecting facilities that cut through their parks that would be part of this effort. So it's a balance. It's probably a little bit more transportation, but there's definitely an important recreational element to it.
Do you have any say or input into the kinds of bike racks or bike lockers you could have at metro stations or major bus stations, or is that in somebody else's wheelhouse?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. The county has a bicycle design guide for bicycle facilities that is in need of update. So with the new Astro guide for active transportation facilities, it does include an updated recommendation when it comes to bike parking design and how many and what type and secure versus just visitor racks outside the front door. So we will make those updates to our own guide as part of this process.
Well, the ones here at the East Falls Church Metro, which I guess is really in Arlington, is just jam packed. They have lockers there and they're rented, and I'm sure they're all full. But the bicycle racks there are just full all during the day. The interesting thing about that setup is that the bike racks happen to be under the I-66 overpass, which is kind of neat because then you actually can park your bicycle someplace where it may not get as wet or snowed on. I imagine in other places you'd have to have some kind of shelter, even if all you had was a lock rack rather than a locker.
Sure, and the county owns lockers at metro stations. All the new metro stations also have bike rooms. Yeah, so the Herndon Monroe bike room, for example, has a pretty high capacity and it's sheltered within the garage. And there's within the garage there are additional racks outside of the secure space.
Has joined the meeting.
So this is and we're currently working on actually having getting a building permit for a freestanding bike shelter that can even work on an underpass. So it would be instead of having just the inverted U racks on an underpass, you could put an actual structure there, like a bike cage with high capacity racks. So there are best practices when it comes to that, particularly at transit stations.
That's good to hear that. I mean, you're not going to get people to use their bicycles that can't park them anymore.
Right.
Okay, Alexis, just by a sec, but Pete, you're next.
Real quick, I was just really blown away, Nicole, by what you're talking about. Really making place, the pedestrian safety, the bike trails and sidewalks and all near and dear to me. So thank you for what you're doing. Do you have any toolbox that will help me slow traffic down on Richmond Highway? We're talking about it over here, but if you could reach out to me somehow, maybe later on, and share some tools, I'd appreciate it.
Great. Yeah, and are you familiar with the presentation that Lauren Delmar put together for, I think it was supervisor, the lead district supervisor, is it Lusk?
Rodney Lusk?
Yes, Lusk. So she presented, I think in July, a whole paper full of strategies to improve safety along the corridor, and slowing down the cars was definitely one of the strategies, but also everything from plantings in the median to create a more of a vertical element to other design and even a rebranding of the corridor. So there are a lot of ideas out there that are currently being discussed with the Board of Supervisors and also with Rachel Flynn, who's very interested in this corridor. So this project will not specifically address Richmond Highway issues, but Richmond Highway is our learning experience to take what we have been able to do on Richmond Highway and make this available, hopefully, to the rest of the county as well. So that's still a discussion we will need to have both with internally, but also with VDOT.
And could you repeat her name, please?
Lauren Delmar, she is the pedestrian program manager.
Thank you.
At FCDOT.
I will reach out. Appreciate it.
Alexis, did you, thank you, Pete. Alexis, did you have a question or comment?
I do. Thanks, Nicole. It's good to see you on my first official meeting here again. I had a question about the guidelines. So you mentioned that you're following, or you're going to be using AASHTO for the design recommendations. So when this is all done and it gets through and accepted and projects start being guided by these new guidelines, VDOT, I presume in the most cases, is going to be building this stuff. What happens when, or if VDOT comes back to Fairfax County and says, these AASHTO guidelines are great, but we use Federal Highway Administration guidelines, or we use some other type of recommendation that's maybe not as progressive or as friendly to non-vehicular users of the road. How, I guess, have there been discussions, or is there MOUs? How has that worked out? Is it a case-by-case thing?
That's a great question. I'm not an engineer, I'm a planner, so I'm trying to answer this to the best of my knowledge. So my understanding is that AASHTO is the national standard. That is what Federal Highway Administration recommends, and particularly for federal projects do need to meet AASHTO, or they need to have a good reason why not. VDOT does not need to, I think that they can pick and choose out of it. So just because it's an AASHTO, it's not necessarily that VDOT does it exactly the same way. VDOT actually has a tendency to do more. So if AASHTO recommends a 2-foot clearance, for example, VDOT says 3. If AASHTO recommends a 4-foot buffer, VDOT recommends 8. So usually they tend to be a little bit more conservative and do more than the minimum. So that's great on one hand, but on the other hand, we need that design flexibility to at least meet AASHTO at the minimum, if there, for example, is a space constraint. So we expect that VDOT will follow AASHTO for the most part, but probably not all of it. And it's also the Code of Virginia regulates some parts. For example, bicycle signals are allowed by AASHTO, but they're not allowed by the Code of Virginia. And this is why we do this dual review of what is in the policy versus what is within the engineering, toolbox.
If I could add to that, we have a situation very similar to this in McLean, and once again, Rachel Flynn is involved. last year and for some time, McLean has been trying to come up with more of a downtown. And one of the things that's been discussed is sort of traffic calming measures and also adjusting, narrowing lanes, things like that. I've not been directly involved in the project. That's something that worked directly out of Supervisor Faust's office. But I know that there has been some discussions. Maybe I'll go so far as to say challenges with VDOT, because as you say, Nicole, you know, with the VDOT having a higher standard, the lanes are wider. You can't narrow them down. You can't add buffers. You can't do things to perhaps make it more compatible with bike lanes. In fact, that was one of my questions that I'd written down was, you know, sort of the width of lanes and bike calming and things like that. And certainly understand how nobody really, I'm surprised that it's only 60% of folks that are worried, whatever, concerned about, you know, being in the same line with traffic, because obviously it can be dangerous, particularly on something like Richmond Highway. But so this is all coming part of it. And I think I'm not going too far on the limb, because a number of us who have met and worked with Rachel, I see somebody who's willing to take on hard questions and things like that. So if there are things that we think are reasonable that we've looked at, that the county might need to do something, whether it's McLean, Richmond Highway, whatever the case may be, or even just in general, to help put some collegial, gentle pressure on VDOT if that's what's required. That's something that I'm sure she wouldn't shy away from, and certainly something the TAP can help do as well too, if we can take a considered opinion and add that to the conversation next. That'd be a perfect opportunity for us if we think that's something that needs to be done. And also, Nicole, if you think it's something that'd be helpful for us to do, with you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Who's this?
This is Tom Bashadny.
Hey, sir.
So, good evening, everyone. Sorry, I'm coming from the board meeting, so I'm a little behind schedule tonight. But I did want to just weigh in on this topic. So, whether it's Richmond Highway or whether it's McLean, we have been working very closely with VDOT to implement different and kind of more urban approaches to how they look at roadway and bike and pedestrian facilities. So we are engaged with them on Richmond Highway in terms of the design of Richmond Highway, the speed of Richmond Highway. We are preparing a proposal for them for McLean to look at some innovative ways to do things. I would say that at the moment, VDOT's leadership, particularly here in Northern Virginia, is receptive to doing things differently than VDOT may have done for the last, 50, 60 years. So I think we do have a VDOT at the moment that is interested in implementing some of the things that we're talking about and working with us. We're not going to get our way on 100% of the things, but I do think that they have been cooperative and receptive. They were actually very cooperative in terms of trying to get some different guidelines from Tyson's that were different from their standards back as far as I think that was adopted in 2011 or 2012, and have been faithful to those revised standards for Tyson. So I want to make sure everybody's aware that this is an ongoing discussion with VDOT, and VDOT is willing to have the discussion and has been receptive to concepts that the county has been talking about.
Tom, really appreciate you bringing us up to speed there. That's not surprising. That's great to hear, and that's very encouraging. That's very encouraging, and of course, exactly the kind of thing we'd expect FCDOT to do. So thank you, sir.
Sure. I mean, that's where we're headed. I mean, we definitely are more urban environment throughout Fairfax.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Jeremy, did I see your hand go up there?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Nicole. I'm really excited about this. I think it's exactly the direction the county should be going. I know that it's may seem easy to put a map together, but it's a complicated process, and there's lots of issues to deal with. I've got 3 questions for you. The first relates to the kind of on what Alexis was talking about with the I think, how do you make sure that whatever you put together can be implemented? I think we've seen some with the bicycle plan is that you put a plan together, but then when you actually get to it, you find out maybe the road's not too big, and maybe that is a major a connection point as part of the plan. And moving that off the road, which I think is important because we need to make sure that people actually feel comfortable using the trails that we're in the what we're putting together. But how much are we looking at on the policy side about land use policy, about how we approach right-of-ways to be able to make those connections?
So currently thank you for the question. It's a really important question because this is a pretty high level plan. So we cannot look at every single road and where the right-of-way line is to see what fits necessarily as part of this project. That's something we do when we do implementation. The current plan, particular trails plan, actually provides some flexibility when it says the trail can be either on one side or the other, depending on what makes sense in the context of what development comes in first. So luckily, we do have a lot of development in Fairfax County, and we have those right away conversations with the developer as part of this process that they provide enough space for the facility, at least to meet it in the basic understanding of what we will need. But in other cases, in our capital projects, when we implement facilities, we do sometimes purchase right away or get an easement. So we have those conversations with adjacent property owners, or we modify the facility to stay on public property and may lose a little bit of the buffer. So there are ways for us to implement or switch to the other side, even if the comprehensive plan is not that specific. So there is leeway, but it's really in when it comes to implementation, once a project is funded in what the engineers do throughout the process, and if it's a really tricky corridor, we can do further studies to see if the feasibility of the project is there.
Yeah, I think it's important as how we talk to the community about kind of this big plan. That's to your point, an important aspect to talk about, like how what are the if we can't figure out how to implement it this time, at least kind of talk about generally as part of the plan, kind of what the challenges and how it moves forward. I want to ask you about the systemic safety action plan. Maybe you can go into a little more detail on this, and particularly how we're integrating kind of issues about how people are not using trails facilities versus kind of the data about people who are using facilities. But we see pedestrian deaths. I know within our own community we have sidewalk connections that are important sidewalk connections to the metro, and the only way that people can walk to the metro, yet people don't take it because it's not a safe pathway. And to me, that seems like a systemic issue, but I don't know how. I'm interested in how broad the existing kind of review of that is.
Sure. And again, we are as part of this process more of a high level. What we're doing as part of this process is to analyze the crashes and the crash data to come up with some profiles to see what are common crash factors, so we can address them through policy recommendations or design recommendations. But to be very specific for each corridor, like a particular sidewalk, a particular connection, that would be a second step. So the action plan we're developing is more like a working plan that says, first we need to look further into those corridors that are identified, what the issues are, and address specifically what created that, what led the pedestrian to cross a road where maybe there's not a crosswalk or a safe place to cross. So it could be intersection spacing, or there's a missing signalized crosswalk, or there is a lack of lighting. So there are all these underlying design factors that would need to be explored further. But then this plan would provide a toolkit of recommendations of potential countermeasures, but also look at it more systemically, as you said, like how much does street lighting increase comfort of certain routes which are safe, but maybe someone prefers to walk along the edge of the road because that's where they feel more comfortable because the trail is too dark. So these type of conversations definitely something we will have as part of this process. But again, what our final product as part of this effort will be is a work plan for staff and other agencies to create, for example, a Vision Zero program, or to have a complete streets policy being developed. These kind of broader efforts that will need separate funding to come to actual, policy recommendations and conclusions and actual projects in the end that do improve the safety on the street.
So this is more of like, so we're leading towards kind of the policy, right? So that we're working on I think you said, or very early stages about how we get to the recommendations, so that if we identify this section is a problem, then we have kind of the policy guidance, kind of direction, the guidance for how VDOT or FC.dot interacts with VDOT in those instances. Is that right?
Yes, and that's why we're doing it now in the first phase, where we're pretty much doing data gathering and analysis. The second phase of this project will be the development of recommendations. So by then we will have that action plan approved or adopted. And we may be potentially able to start implementing some of these recommendations or tasks that need to be done as part of the second phase. But we're so early in the process that we don't have that all established yet. So I can't quite speak to what can be done through this process and what will need to be a separate effort.
Yeah. Okay. My last question, what do you expect to hear from residents when you go out and gather information? What are you going to be asking? What are you interested in hearing?
So the first outreach we do is outside of the comprehensive plan amendment process. So there's only a certain type of questions we can ask at this stage. And what we really want to know at this stage is where do you actively travel to and from? What barriers do you experience? Do you feel safe doing so? And if not, why not? So more broader questions about getting a picture of how our population feels about moving around the county, walking or biking, but also if they have any big ideas, like are you aware of any facility that's missing that you really wish would be there, or a bridge across a beltway, barriers that need to be addressed. So we are going to collect these stories and thoughts that people have about general, perspectives on walking and biking in Fairfax County. And we do get these emails, of course, frequently where people move from other places and like, hey, I can't get anywhere where I live. Like, how come? So we want to capture that and also have a geo-reference. So we have a better understanding where really concerns are, because a lot about active transportation is also perceived safety and perceived comfort, which is hard to measure in actual like hard data, like fatality data or even near miss data. Because if somebody doesn't feel comfortable walking or biking, no matter how safe it truly is, they're not going to do it. So getting these type of perspectives is the first step. And then later on in the process, once we start the comprehensive plan amendment, we will become more specific and ask for, certain trail alignments, how they feel about it, like what if they have certain, ideas about what type of environments they prefer, or just general input from the public, because there's a lot of local knowledge out there we're trying to capture.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had my hand up. Mike, are you seeing that at all?
Hey, Mike, you got to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I should do better than that. My apologies. No, Kevin, I couldn't because your screen was out of the line of six, but now I can. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Nicole, I had three questions as well. The first one, and the Springfield commissioner might jump in, but I had to take exception early on when you said 60%, only 60% felt that they needed, a separated trail from the roadway. I would have thought it would have been much higher of people wanting to be separated from the vehicles.
So it's the 60% are of all of the entire population. 30% of the population would never bike, for example, no matter what facility is provided. So there's this good chunk of the population that's not even part of considered a potential users. So if you just look at the potential users, then you're in your 80% range. But of the general public, it's about 60%.
Do you get any feedback at all from the auto users on that, where they, for example, over the weekend, I was on Commerce Street in Springfield and noticed the markings for the bicycle lane seemed to begin way too early. I mean, it was just impossible to keep vehicles out of that lane if people needed to make a right. You get any of that feedback in the study?
Sure. Yeah, we definitely would like to know the perceived safety of bicycle infrastructure, particularly on type of road. We know that a white stripe is not necessarily keeping drivers out. That's why, and most users know that that's why they would like that separation. And the issue with these bike lanes that we have that were done through repaving is that they were not a comprehensive project that was planned start to finish that had best practices and no gaps. It's done through the repaving process, the annual repaving program that VDOT has. So the county partners with VDOT. They send us the list of what roads will be paved, and we look at the list to see where do bike lanes fit. And that's where we are able to implement bike lanes, but they are not complete facilities per se, particularly because VDOT has a requirement to maintain full capacity at signal. So often a bike lane drops in front of the signal. So we are aware, and our public is aware that those bike lanes are an increase in safety for the cyclists particularly, but they're not ideal. So we would need to have a separate project to bring the bike lanes to the intersections. However, it's still a benefit for everyone to have that separation and that space, because it's a lot more predictable, and also traffic calming benefit.
Thank you. The second question, I had at the beginning had wondered why we weren't just taking off the shelf plans, but thanks to Alexis and Jeremy's, and I think Mike's input, I have a little better understanding of that. But one thing I did want to ask you on as we come up with the plan is, my understanding, at least a few years ago, was that Portland was the leader in bike lanes. And have you seen any input from them, or do you know if they've changed the standards, or are they still considered the leader?
Portland, Oregon?
Yeah.
They're still one of the leaders, particularly for urban environments. The pioneer was actually Davis, California, which sees now 30% of their population uses bikes as primary transportation, but it's a smaller town setting. But both of these places were also influencing how bike infrastructure is being perpetuated throughout the meeting. Sorry, throughout the United States. So they went first, but it has been refined in other places, in New York and Minnesota, Indianapolis, even here Arlington and DC are all leaders in bicycle infrastructure development, and they are doing experimental treatments that are not yet in AASHTO, and they're not yet in the METCD, but they're trying them out to see what works, and if it works well, then it's being adopted into the national standards, and then we can use them as well. So we are not necessarily in a position to do experimental treatments on VDOT roads, but once they are proven to be safe and effective, we can use them as well. So that's why this new AASHTO guide is very exciting for us, because it includes a year's worth of experimental treatments in other communities, including Portland. And we actually hired Alta Planning and Design for this project because the founder of Alta was that pioneering bike planner of Portland, Oregon. So they're bringing a lot of this best practice expertise from the West Coast to us.
So if you saw something that looked like a really good idea in another city, but it hadn't yet been adopted by AASHTO, you would have to wait on that before you tried to bring it into Fairfax. Okay. Yeah,
we will have to in most cases. There may be an exception to it, a pilot project somewhere. For example, protected bike lanes were not quite in AASHTO yet, but we can still do it because VDOT adopted or endorsed NACTO. NACTO is another design guide, which is not as official as AASHTO, but it's also national level. And really NACTO is who pushes a lot of the progressive bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure improvements. And then it filters down to AASHTO down the road. And VDOT has in their road design manual, they mention NACTO as something we can do, so we can at least bring this up to VDOT and work with them through the process. For example, Richmond Highways has these cycle tracks, which are not yet NACTO, but they are NACTO, and that's why we can do them.
Okay, and then lastly, and I'm sorry, Tom dropped off the call because he might have wanted to weigh in, but and I can ask this on every presentation. Are you getting any COVID budget pressures on the duration or the depth of this project?
That's a good question. Tom is probably better to answer. But we are funded for the first phase, and we have requested funding for phase 2. And that's all I can say at the moment. But
okay,
currently, we have a set funding that was given to us in July 2019, and that is that is available to us.
Okay,
So,
thank you very much.
Kevin, this is
Yeah.
Bashani. I'm still here. I just changed devices, so sorry about that. But yes, we have a funding request in for phase 2, and we'll see how the virus pandemic changes things. But at the moment, things are probably not as bad for the county as they might have been. But it'll depend on how all the revenue sources shake out. So the board will be talking about that for several months, beginning of next year.
All right, good. Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I would like to try and keep a schedule. I know it's a radical thought for the TAC. We haven't always done that. If there is a burning question from a commissioner, I certainly will allow it. But I did want to make some closing remarks a little bit for just a couple minutes so we can move on to the autonomous vehicle activity. Any burning questions for a commissioner before I close out a bit? Thanks, I appreciate it. One of the things I just wanted to mention briefly, obviously, and Nicole, you mentioned it in the beginning, talking about connection with the bikes committee, bikes and sidewalks committee. We've got some connections there, both on a lot of levels. Pete Sitnick in the past has volunteered to be a liaison there. He started to lay some groundwork there. He's talked about it in the past couple meetings. I think that's the kind of thing we're going to be doing. But also, we don't want to preclude other commissioners from being involved as well too. So, I don't want to get too much into this because we do have to move on a little bit, but this is a great example of maintaining connectivity and also allowing the TAC to be able to remain substantively involved. If there's 2 or 3 TAC members particularly are interested in this topic that can maybe be a bit more involved in this, phone calls, conversations. I will say anytime more than 2 TAC members are together, it is a meeting. There needs to be minutes. But the conversation with 2 TAC members is okay. And so I wanted to sort of point that out. We'll talk a little bit at the end about how we're going to structure the TAC a little bit as much as we're running out of time. And we do plan to have an offsite here at some point. And Tom, if you're still here, we are working on an agenda for that to take advantage of your gracious offer there to help do that facilitated work session. So I did want to throw that out here while we're on this topic. Okay. Well, thanks very, very much. Nicole, we look forward to having you come back soon. I know that you've got a presentation coming up. Is there something particular you need us to do this evening or in the next couple of weeks to help you along with your process?
Once we launch our website and have the official public launch where we will have the interactive map and a survey and some materials out, we will look to have your help to spread the word. If you have listservs or connections, please share the word, spread the word that this process is happening, what it's about, and how to get involved.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we will certainly, there's lots of informal ways to communicate as well. Please feel free to contact me, contact Calvin, whatever approach you feel most comfortable with to make sure that we're aware of things we need to do. And thank you, very much.
Thank
Nicole,
you.
you're clear to go if you want. You're welcome to stay if you'd like. If you don't, it's okay. We understand. Would like to move to the next item on the agenda on the connected and autonomous vehicles. We're very fortunate to have some important guests here with us. But before I do that, actually, I'm going to have a special guest who had not yet identified herself to make the introduction for Dale here. Was part of the idea, my conversations here that led to this being on the agenda. It's a good thing we all like Rachel Flynn and said nice things about her because she's actually been listening for a while. Rachel, if you'd like to introduce Dale Panetta, we give you the opportunity.
Mike, and
Sure.
thanks for putting this on the agenda because sadly Dale will be leaving us soon, and he was the mastermind behind this effort along with Etta Nahapetian. And so Dale has a long history in transportation, been a DOT director in different localities, most recently Loudon. And he knew Rob Salzer, who was my predecessor, before Rob was in his role. And after Dale retired from Loudon, Rob asked him to come to Fairfax, and they were creating what is known as the ESSP, the Economic Success Strategic Plan. And Rob really wanted to see something innovative done. And he asked Dale, and Dale said, well, heck, what about AVs? Let's try it. And so they're going to speak about that tonight. But I really want to emphasize what a big deal this is. This was not a given. Nobody thought really that they could pull this off to create something so really revolutionary in our county. And we're the first locality in all of Virginia to have an AV, autonomous vehicle. They call it CAV because connected autonomous, for all intents and purposes, AV, on public right-of-way as a public service. There have been private efforts, but this is the first that's public. And so I can't emphasize enough how much we appreciate what Dale has brought to this, and we're so sorry to be seeing him ride off into the sunset, but very well deserved. And so Dale, I'll let you take it from here. Etta will be also presenting, but if you and I keep telling them both, you need to tell the story of how this happened, because we can all talk about facts and figures and I think it's important for him to tell you the details, all the partnerships he had, the people at VDOT he knew, the people and other components of the state. And so Dale, I'll let you take it from here. Hopefully you're hearing.
Yes. Well,
can you hear me? So
yep.
Thank you for the kind words, Rachel. This was,
of course,
this was in fact a incredible team effort. There are lots of people who have contributed to this project. This was not a one-man operation by any stretch. It was actually one of the more amazing teams that I've ever participated in with. But Etta and I have a presentation for the commission, and we actually have her kicking it off, and then I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit about the planning, process that we took on to get through this very complicated, highly regulated process, and then we'll wrap up with some lessons learned and some thoughts about where the county may want to go from here.
Thank you. That would be perfect.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen. Is it working?
Well, we can see you.
Can you see the presentation?
Not yet, but Brent might be able to share your screen if for some reason yours isn't working.
Yeah, I can, it looks like it doesn't look, so if you're not, it looks like I'm presenting, but if so you're not seeing it, then maybe if Calvin could share.
Yeah. Brent, had you, I know you've done, or Calvin, whatever can do.
I'm working on that right now. Give me a second, please.
Okay, no problem.
Tanya, are you there?
I am.
When I try to share the screen, it asks me if I want to share file or new whiteboard, and it asks me to become a presenter.
So you need to grab that ball and put it by your name because it was by Edda's.
Okay.
Edda has just been able to share her screen.
We just saw it.
Oh.
Yeah, let me try one more time.
Sorry, okay, let me put her back. Sorry about that. Okay.
All right, give it another try.
Okay, here it comes. Here it comes.
You see
there
it?
we go. We can see it.
You can see it, and if I hit, can you see it still?
Absolutely. Looks like, dare I say, almost a slideshow presentation.
So it looks like an actual slideshow to you?
Looks like an actual slideshow.
Yes.
Now, I can't go through it, but that's what it looks like.
Well, thank you. So good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Yes, that's her, Naha Petian, the Economic Initiatives Coordinator from the Department of Economic Initiatives here in Fairfax County. I'm here with Dale Castelo, also from EI, who really, as Rachel said, in many, many ways was the architect of the CAV. And also I have John Zarbo with us from DOT, who has the big job of overseeing the operations of the vehicle over the next year. So we are about to launch Relay this week. On Thursday is going to be the launch date. And obviously this is a major milestone for us. And it has been a really heavy lift for us in the Department of Economic Initiatives and Fairfax County DOT, and with our partners, Department of Rail, Public Transportation, VDOT, and others. So as Rachel said, she really pressed us to really lay out and tell you the whole story of how we got here, how we've used innovation, how we've leveraged emerging technology, research, mobility, and the application of these technologies to address our challenges, and specifically how we've used and how we are using transportation technology as an economic development tool. So we'll lay out for you our journey. So strap yourself in. Hope you guys have a comfortable drink in hand. And we'll kind of lay out the different building blocks and how we got to this point. And after we kind of lay out that journey, we'll also provide a deeper dive on Relay, and we'll also discuss the transportation planning considerations, lessons learned along the way. Maybe talk a little bit also about what some potential next steps are, and then John will also talk to you about some nitty-gritty specifics about implementation and the ongoing operations of the vehicle. So here's a nice photo of Relay and of the route. This is a culmination of our work for several years in expanding and nurturing the innovation ecosystem. And we are joined by Commonwealth of Virginia and Edens, which is the real estate developer of the Mosaic District on this project. The Department of Rail and Public Transportation was really interested in understanding how this technology can be used as a first mile, last mile mobility solution. And as a result, this is the first state-funded autonomous public transportation demonstration project. Fairfax, we're very single occupant vehicle dependent, and mobility is evolving worldwide. And this pilot project is going to help us learn about this technology and how it can benefit the communities that we serve. So the loop is between the Dunlong Metro Station and Mosaic, and it's going to be operating from Monday through Thursday from 10 to 2. The demonstration project is scheduled to run for about a year. And though the vehicle can house up to 12 people, because of COVID, we're going to be only be able to take 3 people plus the safety steward that's on board. But there's also going to be a mobile-friendly webpage to help us track where the vehicle is, and hopefully that might help us manage demand if we've got a lot of people who want to ride the vehicle. So what is our journey? So the policy framework is really critical. And as Rachel mentioned, Rob Stalzer, like this is something Rob really kind of said in almost every presentation, how important the policy framework is in embarking on a project of this type, this size, this magnitude. It needs to be conducted under a policy framework and broad support from stakeholders and the board. So for us, this really was our starting point. The Economic Success Strategic Plan. It was adopted by the board in March 2015. And goal 1 in particular, which was about diversifying our economy, really highlighted that goal, highlighted some specific things, highlighted the need to support emerging technology, to expand the research base in the county, and emphasize also that how research really is a basic building block for the innovation economy. I just wanted to kind of highlight also that the county has embarked on a countywide strategic plan, which I think you guys probably are all aware of. This latest iteration is also, it's a broad interdisciplinary strategic direction for the county. And this is a list of the key themes, and virtually all of which can be achieved or at least facilitated in some way by smart community, emerging technology. So creating a coalition. So growing innovation and the research footprint of Fairfax was a relatively new focus for many of our stakeholders. So we really set out to bring everyone to the same level of education on the importance of emerging technology and on what was happening on the ground. So we enlisted thought leaders to come and to talk at a variety of different venues to offer insights in emerging technology and what roles and responsibilities for local government could potentially play in their deployment. So we had a series of events specifically focused on automation, smart community technology, and its potential impact on land use and transportation planning. And the events highlighted the research and kind of for us, I always say it increased the stickiness of our relationship with the universities and other research institutions and familiarized staff with this technology. So this was our first event, was in December 2016, and this was at George Mason University. We called it the Innovation Discourse. We brought together thought leaders to talk about the broader planning and societal implications of autonomous systems. And we really didn't know what kind of turnout we would get. And despite freezing rain and very challenging parking and directional challenges, I don't know if any of you have tried to get around George Mason University first time, it's kind of tricky, but despite all that, we had 200 people despite all that. And so we knew there was some there, and that we had some traction in this space. So, and some of you may have been a part of some of these events. This was our next event, which was called Test Track to the Future in May 2017. And this was an all-day event to highlight that Fairfax County is the test ground for self-driving cars and connected infrastructure in Virginia. So the state's intelligent roads are all located in Fairfax, and as you may know, top autonomous vehicle researchers come here to road test their technology. So we brought together AV experts, policymakers, manufacturers, entrepreneurs to present the research that's happening, to showcase the technology, and we had some super fun demonstration rides, as you can see from the excited faces in this picture. It was a really fun day, and it helped inform staff, the community, business representatives, all those different pieces of the innovation ecosystem that we talk about to come through and to talk about what's possible. It strengthened our relationship with VDOT, with BTRC and industry. It created some new relationships for us. It introduced the topic of pilot projects. It highlighted that VDOT and BTRC were looking for demonstration projects. So it really opened the door for us to start having these discussions about having the pilot project. So again, I'm just laying out for you how we built these blocks and built and educated folks and lay the groundwork for the project. So it didn't come out of nowhere. I'm going to keep on telling you the story because it's a good one. And so the next thing we had was Mobility Hackathon. This is the county's first hackathon. We had it in November 2017 in partnership with VDOT to highlight their new smart road cloud data portal that they had introduced. They wanted to get the word out. So, and to get people playing with it and understanding it and trying to kick the tires and try to break it to see what, basically the ultimate idea was, can startup companies use this data to create tools, apps, companies, and if not, was there additional data that if they had a few extra pieces of data, could they make something out of it?
Just quickly, Jennifer John Madden, one of our retired commissioners, was at this event. So yes, I remember hearing a bit about it. It's really nice to see the story all come together. So sorry for the interruption, but thank you.
Good. Yeah, I hope it's okay. And
It's perfect.
Good. So we had software and app developers, data scientists, students. We had more than 100 people come. It was this intense 2-day sprint. People could, some people stayed all night. We held it at Refraction, a really cool co-working space in Reston. So that was this piece. And also we then also had in the March 2018, and I really must mention at the Mobility Hackathon, it really was quite successful that VDOT decided to partner with CIT, the Center for Innovative Technology, to have a similar event all around the state. They took our model and they spread it and they did it repetitively all around the state over the next year. So we had the Smart Cities Readiness Workshop. This event focused on smart infrastructure. This was in partnership with the Smart Cities Council, which is an international organization focused on smart cities, emerging tech. And it focused on smart infrastructure, the mobility ecosystem. And we had over 200 experts from the county agencies, public schools, regional transportation agencies, utilities, universities, nonprofits, to help the county start drawing a conceptual roadmap to becoming a smart county. So the event really signaled, as you can see from this photo, that we've got some champions and we've got leadership that's really interested in making this transition. So all those different events basically helped us refine our policy framework. It refined it. We were able to distill it to these smart community goals after we went through that coalition building process. So these goals are a synthesis between the starting point of goal 1 of the ESSP and the resulting conversations that we had over the year and a half. And it crystallized our strategy and that our focus for smart community. We weren't doing it just for technology's sake, but really our strategy really crystallized to be this is about addressing Fairfax County challenges specifically. So, so that brings us to the project. So now we can pivot and give you some background about the project that we're here to tell you about tonight. So let's start with our partners. So many of these partners, these are the partners that we nurtured during those events. We get a lot of questions of who are the partners and why are they interested in being a partner. So, so here they are. So Fairfax County, and particularly DOT, is going to be managing the oversight of all shuttle operations. Dominion Energy purchased the shuttle for us, and this was a relationship that kind of came out of them attending our events and meetings that we had subsequent to those, and we discovered these common interests. VDOT provided vehicle infrastructure, wrote a lot of support on signage and striping, and the Virginia Transportation Research Council and VTTI are going to be also providing independent study report on the project. DRPT provided the grant funding. Edens, of course, is providing shuttle location and some great public relations opportunities. Easy Mile is the shuttle manufacturer. It's a French company. Transdev is the company that DOT has hired to be the third-party operator for the day-to-day operations. And George Mason School of Business, we're also partnering with them to conduct the human factors research for the project. So this slide summarizes our goals. And I do want to highlight again that key driver for us is the economic factor, how this is an economic driver for us, and the goal is to position Fairfax as a leader in smart community and emerging technology. I mean, these next two slides are how we are together. We are joint messaging as project partners with holistic project goals. We're focusing on innovation, the first mile, last mile, safety. There's human error causes 94% of car crashes. So this could be a real game changer as far as safety, and of course to meet our sustainability goals. So now I'm going to pass it on to Dale to share more on the project planning implications and some of the lessons that we've learned.
Thank you, Etta. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I've been introduced here a couple of times, I think, but my name is Dale Castello. I'm also with the county's Department of Economic Initiatives, and I'm also a member of the CAV project team since its conception, and I'll be around for a couple more days until our deployment. So my part of the presentation picks up with project planning efforts that our team undertook to help us identify what vehicle, if any, would work for this project and at what location. I promise not to bore you with all the dirty details. This was a lengthy process, but I will say that this has been an area of real interest among local governments and transportation agencies across the state and the Mid-Atlantic, all of whom have been trying to learn from our project and in some cases replicate sort of the work we've done here. Next, we were asked to offer some lessons learned as part of the project planning and development process. Obviously, since this project is really all about research and testing, I'm sure there'll be many more lessons to reflect on in the coming months, but we do have a few thoughts to offer. Before I start, I do want to quickly apologize and let you know that I'm going to offer my comments. They'll be relatively brief, but unfortunately I have a family obligation that can't be avoided, and I'm going to have to jump off shortly after my comments. But you're in excellent hands. Several members of the CAV team are on the call tonight and available to answer your questions. So as I mentioned, I'll start with the planning process. From the beginning, the challenge here was to pair the right vehicle with the right operating environment. NHTSA, which is an acronym that we all use for the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, is the federal oversight agency for research and testing projects like ours. NHTSA is generally familiar with the vehicles deployed for pilot projects. They see them repeatedly and continue to see them as more universities and transportation agencies embark on these types of projects. When it comes to vehicles, NHTSA is primarily concerned. They're concerned with a number of things, but they're really concerned with whether the vehicle meets federal motor vehicle safety standards, or another one of those acronyms that we all use, FMVSS. In most cases, the latest generation of autonomous vehicles, like the low-speed shuttle we'll be using in Merrifield, generally do not meet the safety standards. And that's what makes this process very complex. And let me just quickly say that the AV industry seems to be evolving in two distinct lanes. No pun intended there. In one lane, there are manufacturers that are focused on sort of new and innovative vehicle designs that incorporate the very latest in navigational and collision avoidance technologies. But in most cases, these vehicles, at least at this time, do not comply with FMVSS. Many of them are imports that are being developed and under a completely different set of safety rules and so forth. In this separate lane, there's a growing number of companies that are focused on taking FMVSS, the safety standard compliant vehicles, just like the ones we all drive, and retrofitting them with advanced navigation and collision avoidance systems, and then deploying them. So you could take a standard transit vehicle manufactured here in the United States, retrofit it with the navigation and crash avoidance systems, and deploy it as an AV. And it would look just like one of our regular transit vehicles. I'd just say that, we contemplated both types of vehicles very, very carefully. And we also considered the complexity that would come along with each of those decisions, whichever direction we went. And obviously the role that NHTSA plays in the oversight of your project changes rather drastically when you pick non-compliant versus compliant vehicle. So next slide, please. So because NHTSA is pretty familiar with the vehicles, we found that they're mostly curious about the proposed operating environment. Needless to say, every operating environment is unique to that project. Early on, it was obvious to our team that NHTSA was particularly curious about operating speeds, left turns. We had heard all sorts of stories about the evolution of the technology to allow vehicles to actually make left turns, signalized intersections, on-street parking, and the prevalence of bikes, pedestrians, and school-age children in and around the operating environment. Unfortunately, most of the operating environments that we considered for the project were fatally flawed in that, one or more of these conditions could be mitigated. The one location that seemed to fit best with NHTSA's guidance was the Dunloring connection to the Mosaic in Merrifield. Our team, which included representatives from Tom's department, DOT, County Exec's office, VDOT, more specifically VTRC, and the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, unanimously concluded that really Merrifield was our only option. I think there's another slide there.
Dale, if I could, I can't stand it anymore. Which type of vehicle did you choose? I think I know, but can you tell me?
So we chose an Easy Mile low-speed shuttle that Etta portrayed in the photo earlier in the presentation.
Was it compliant with FMVSS?
It is not compliant.
Okay,
So Mr. Chairman, we took on all the complexities of taking a vehicle. To start, there's a very complicated import process that comes along with the fact that it's not compliant. It doesn't meet, U.S. safety standards. So, and Dominion Energy has taken on that responsibility. Just to give you some insight, I mean, these vehicles, unless federal law changes, they can be used for research and testing for a period of 5 years. But at that point, the vehicle has to be destroyed or exported. Now, a lot of people who are importing these vehicles are betting that sometime within that 5-year window, the feds will change the regs around these vehicles. But that's the rule right now. So it's risky business to actually import those vehicles, unless you have an international partner that you can use the vehicle, that could also use the vehicle, I should say.
Got you. Thank you.
Sure. I also want to mention that, along the way, early in our conversations, the Department of Rail and Public Transportation had expressed an interest in a first mile, last mile transit project, specifically to evaluate this technology. So again, I just want to say that was another check in our box for pursuing a project in the Merrifield area. If you look at the location of Mosaic in proximity to the Dunloring Metro Station, it's just about a mile. So it's almost a perfect location, perfect project. You know, as we move toward deployment later this week, I think we've really done a pretty extraordinary job mitigating nearly all the concerns that NHTSA has raised in the planning phases of this project. You know, our operating environment, according to NHTSA, is probably the most challenging environment they've ever awarded a waiver for, and that's pretty amazing in my mind. And for that, really, I give credit to the amazing team that has supported this project through every phase of its development. We are just incredibly lucky to have such a talented group of professionals from a really diverse group of departments and agencies supporting what's really a complex project. You know, as Rachel alluded to, you know, I've been doing this forever. I think I'm approaching my 40th year in the transportation planning mobility world. And I know from my personal experience, I've never worked with a team quite like this. So it was really a tough project to pull off. So next slide. I'm going to move into some of the lessons. As for lessons learned, you know, frankly, there are many. In fact, we have joked throughout the process that the two most important lessons are, frankly, innovation is hard, and never, ever, ever be the first, which unfortunately we didn't know that lesson until now. All kidding aside, there are actually many others, and I'll spare you, but only mention a few. First, you know, I'd point out that these vehicles, along with the supporting infrastructure that they require to operate and navigate, generate lots of data. And one lesson, I believe, is there needs to be a comprehensive data governance policy that identifies how this data will be managed, how it'll be shared. And you know, some people think this data has monetary value, and so we need to understand, you know, how it'll be sold. You know, whatever the case would be, we need that governance policy for this. You know, this is actually an important lesson for all aspects of the county's smart community strategies. And secondly, and related to the first lesson, is the smart city or smart community tech industry is setting its sights on the public rights of way as their distribution network for sensors, or you know, whatever their widget or tech is. They see the rights of way as their network. And once again, we think there needs to be some thought given as to how this distribution will occur, what role local governments will play in that process. You know, can we, for example, monetize the data that we generate, and can we monetize, you know, their ability to access the rights of way and create real sources of revenue for local governments. Lastly, there's an extraordinary interest in this technology. There are numerous entities that are looking to test this tech for a wide variety of applications. You know, one of our lessons is to take advantage of that interest and create new opportunities. And that's really been a message that we've been sharing with a long list of local governments who are reaching out to learn about our project. You know, our goal early on, which has evolved into a lesson really, was to the extent possible, leverage the project to attract multiple partners so as to minimize risk, expand our resources, and expand our expertise. When we were giving our marching orders to explore this project, I distinctly remember being told, you know, don't come back with something that includes a heavy budget commitment. And obviously, with contributions from our partners, we've been able to pursue this in a very economical way, particularly when you compare this project to other local government pilot projects around the country. So anyway, in conclusion, I'm gonna pass this back to Etta so she can wrap up our last slide and talk about, you know, some things what the county may want to consider as they move forward from this point.
Dale, I could really appreciate it. Just to interrupt for a moment. When do you have to leave? What time is your hard stop?
I've got a few minutes. I don't have a lot of time. I apologize. I misunderstood the you know, where we were on the agenda, I should say. So anyway, go ahead. Did you have a question, Mike? Or
No, but I do want to ask you one thing before you go, so I'll let you finish up.
okay.
Ask two, and then I do want to ask one thing before you leave. Please, Anna. Thanks for your understanding, and back to you.
Yes, absolutely. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, okay, great. So this is our last slide. Where do we go from, well, yes, where do we go from here? Frankly, we've been so focused on phase one that it's been difficult to direct much thought on phase two. But now, only with a few days from deployment, we think it's time to restart this process and explore the wide range of interests among the AV industry and our public and private partners. And as with phase one, we've started from the beginning with conversations in and around the industry and with the research community to better understand where things are heading and what everyone's interests really are. It's early, but there's some themes that are starting to emerge. And let's face it, the possibilities are endless. So one idea we've got is to build on phase one with alternative technology. And this is something that Tom has pointed out in conversations himself, that this phase one really is a test of easy mile technology. So since that's the vehicle that we picked. So is it possible to deploy alternative technology, alternative manufacturers in different operating environments, or maybe even the same operating environment? Second, could we explore similar service deployment but utilize on-demand technology? Staff, we've had several conversations with Uber who seem to be quite interested in the deployment of this type, so that's a possibility. Third, we could explore the same or similar deployment as a paratransit service. As an aside, the disability community seem to be incredibly interested in AV technology. We've had a lot of interest for Relay, folks that really want to understand how Relay is going to work. And as a way of expanding their mobility options and independence. We really could have a home run if we could combine the on-demand option with the paratransit. Next, we could explore a mobility hub pilot that, in addition to the regular micromobility devices that are normally in such a place, we could include on-demand low-speed shuttle operating as an on-demand service. So that's another option. And lastly, we could pilot mobility as a service platform to streamline trip planning and payment platforms across all modes and devices. So I wanted to give a few minutes to John Zarbo to jump in to kind of add his insights as we're moving into the operations phase of this project.
Sure, I can jump in. Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you for your time. My name is John Zarbo, and I work in the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. And I'll get a little bit into the weeds, but I won't get too much into the weeds. So as they all touched a little bit on the project, the route is going to run from Dunloring to the Mosaic District. It's all going to operate Monday through Thursday. And so how we normally start off our day is we do a little pre-trip and we do an inspection safety of the vehicle, and then the vehicle then goes out on the route and does a test run. And then from there, it goes ahead and operates between 10 and 2 every single Monday through Thursday. And then from there, at right around 2:30, it starts as a static display is what we call it. And from 2:30 to 3:30, it'll be on display at the Mosaic District on Strawberry Lane. And, that's going to be the opportunity for our safety operator to answer questions, talk about the technology, and discuss any items that might be of interest to Fairfax County residents. We'll obviously have a safety operator on board at all times, but through a lot of work from everyone on this call and part of the CAV team, the vehicle does run completely autonomous. From Dunloring all the way to Mosaic and back. Been in it many times. It's a really enjoyable trip, and it's very interesting technology. For COVID reasons at this point, in social distancing, we're going to limit it to 3 passengers along with 1 safety operator. So that's the weeds of the project. Tell you a little bit about how it phased in was, we went from a mapping phase to a testing phase to now we're at the point where we're going to be riding with the public. The mapping phase, if you can imagine, took just a little bit under a month to do. So you're looking at mapping of about a 1 mile stretch. It took us about a month. The vehicle started off at, when it's in mapping phase, it's right around 3 miles per hour, and then goes through the whole route and maps it completely out. And so now at this point, once you get through that mapping phase, then you start adding trajectory and speed and getting it more, at a, right around 10 miles per hour operating speed. So again, we went through the mapping phase, the testing phase, and now we are at the, the rollout phase, and we're just very, very excited to get this started next week. We've done a lot of training. We've done training with fire, police, rescue, my ops staff, so that we can report to any incidents that may occur. And then just talk about the complexity a little bit, and then I'll turn it back to the rest of the group. We had
John, could I just ask you, sorry to interrupt,
Sure,
but
I
have a map up. Could you mention the streets? You start out on Strawberry, and what streets to get over to Dunloring?
Sure. Etta, do you mind flipping back to the map? Sure.
Whoops.
I think it's your first or second. There we go. So there's where we are. And so we're going to be operating from Dunloring. So our first stop is going to start out at Bay A at Dunloring Metro Center. And then we're going to travel down Marylee Drive to Eskridge, and then around Eskridge to the Barnes and Noble. And that'll be our second stop. And then from there, we will go back and forth between 10 and 2.
That's great.
And to just real quick, tell you a story about the complexity of it. Just so you know, that area of Marylee, from Marylee to Avenir Place on the north side of the route, it's about 3/4 of a mile. We had some incidences where we had to deal with some tree trimming to make sure the vehicle ran autonomous, because we had a lot of low-hanging trees and stuff. And if you can imagine on that little area of road, the road actually goes from Fairfax County property to VDOT property, back to Fairfax property, back to VDOT property, back to Fairfax property, and then it goes into private road, and then it goes into WMATA. So the complexities that Dale and Etta talked about that we had to weave our way through were unbelievable, even just for tree trimming and mowing and so forth. So it's been a great project. We've learned a lot. We are very, very excited to get service started. We are my team is, we're just really excited. We have a great group of operations staff, and we're just really excited for the next year. And, I can't thank enough for the whole CAV team. And like Dale said, and Etta said, it's been a great experience. And we're just really, really looking forward to Thursday to roll it out. So, I'm here for any questions you might have about the operational aspects of the CAV.
Well, actually, one quick thing on operational, maybe the first part of operational. What kind of media rollout you guys are going to have on Thursday? I mean, I would imagine balloons and activities and things like that. It's worthy of attention, obviously.
You guessed exactly right with the balloons. And I know Anna might be on the call, though I don't know if Anna is in panelist mode to be able to talk.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if you can, because I know that if you're not a panelist, you might not be able to talk if she's an attendee.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, we're going to start around 10 o'clock. We're going to have a couple guest speakers from all the partners that are involved. That goes from Fairfax to Dominion to government officials, and then from there, from hopefully 10 to 10:45, we'll have the event. We'll be socially distanced. It'll be a small event, but it'll be a nice ribbon cutting. And then from there, we're going to make some trips on the CAV, starting hopefully around 10:45, 11. And it's exciting. We got a couple Fairfax County residents who have reached out to us that were just really excited about the project. So, you know, they're going to be some of our first riders, and we do have some media that'll be there, and so we're going to have a really good representation leading into, you know, Thursday and then into riding, traveling with the public.
So Thursday, 2 days from now, Thursday, or is it Thursday next week?
Thursday, 2 days from 22nd.
22nd. I know with the COVID rules, it could be a challenge, but if commissioners wanted to come and stand 6 to 8 to 12 feet apart from each other, would they be able to come there and be part of the crowd?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be an issue at all. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
We're just requiring face masks and to, you know, I'm planning on being very socially distanced. So yes, it's not going to be as big of a crowd as, you know, as everyone would think, but it's going to be a good sized amount of people.
Well,
We are asking for folks to register, so in case like for contact tracing. And Mike, I can send you the invitation to circulate with the group.
appreciate it very much. And obviously, I can't speak for the schedule of the commissioners, but it's something that I know we'd all like to consider going if we possibly can do it. So thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is Tom.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So one other thing just to mention is that, and Ed did mention it earlier, that Virginia Transportation Research Institute is part of this as well. Mm-hmm. And they will be doing a survey of passengers. They are actually doing a survey of the community as well to get information about how people feel about this. What do they think? You know, what are their concerns? And so that is also part of this as well, is to kind of assess the community reaction to this, given some of the discussion that's happened on a national basis. So wanted to just mention that that's another aspect of this, you know, multi-layered project.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, exactly. And so we've got 2 universities that are partners for us. We've got the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute and George Mason that are involved both with the technical and with the human factors research. And we're really hoping to get, again, to see if there's an economic impact as well. Will this drive people to Mosaic? Will it help the businesses recover from COVID? Can this be an economic feature in addition to the mobility pieces that we want to learn from the project?
Yes. It's obviously very interesting, very exciting. I know from the top of the community, the county leadership all the way down, both obviously in FCDOT and the board of supervisors. This is a great accomplishment. We knew about what was happening here. It's fantastic to see and can clearly see when your tree trimming is hard. As Rachel said, this is not an easy thing to do. This is eye-watering. This is
Mr. Chair, if I could ask,
yes,
before we lose Dale, so do you all have thoughts about next steps of the things that Etta listed? And again, you know, these are not going to be easy lifts. These are quite complex, but did anything speak to the tech in terms of what you see as next steps? I would think it would be good to hear from the whole commission and what speaks to you about this, what's exciting, and what would you want to see? Like if you were there on Thursday, whether you're there or not, you go, well, then what? Now what are we going to do? And it would be really good to hear from you all, because this isn't a static project. This is a launch of the future.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, you know, just one of the items there about the connection with Uber, we've been talking about connecting up with Uber, Lyft, and things that for a while, even just to get more familiar. And so there's no question that, and I'll go out on a limb here a little bit and try and speak gently for the commissioners who are here and can disagree if they choose to, but we want to do what we can to help. And we definitely do what we can to help move on to the next steps there. There's a huge degree of momentum there. I mean, that we've all in various forms in our past worked in community groups, tried to lead community groups, tried to move things forward. The hardest part is getting things going. And then, so we want to keep things moving. And so Dale, and in fact, I'll take advantage of that to sort of ask my question I had before you left. And I specifically want to invite you, but I really want to invite all members of the crew in whatever fashion makes sense. Dale, I particularly wanted to reach out to you because I know you're turning into a pumpkin here, both tonight and for the county. We're going to have a planning. I'm calling it an offsite sometime next year. As I mentioned earlier, Tom Bazzani has been gracious enough to offer us a facilitated working session. We very much want to take advantage of it. Dale, I would love it if you would consider please coming and talking to us about the kinds of things you think we ought to be looking at for implementation, particularly, yes, the connected autonomous vehicle, but also with your depth and breadth of knowledge from your previous 40 years in transportation. We would be very, very grateful if you'd be willing to come and try and speak with us remotely, if that's still the situation we're doing, at a time of your convenience, of course. If you'd be willing to, I'd at least like to let you consider it. If you want to say yes right now, you can do so. If you're thinking, say no, let me try and twist your arm, please, sir.
I'd be happy to help in any way I can, Mike. So no problems there.
Okay, well, thank you, sir.
Yeah, and just in terms of where do you go from here? I suspect that the county's budgets are not actually getting easier in COVID times. They're probably getting much harder. I would say leverage phase 2. I would, obviously, Tom's team and others in the county are going to probably have some thoughts, and those thoughts will probably evolve as phase 1 starts to, mature and lessons learned are growing around that project. But, there's so much interest in this technology. We were lucky to sort of stumble into this situation with Dominion Energy, which really, really made this project possible. But I think there are other entities like Dominion that are equally interested in this technology, and there are going to be some opportunities, I think, to do another public-private partnership to accomplish some of these, mobility research goals, whatever it may be. Etta and I had a number of meetings with Uber, just to follow up on that. Yeah. And they have a footprint in DC now. They are doing mapping, and they're active. And the idea of working with what they called one of the DC suburbs in terms of some sort of on-demand deployment had a lot of appeal. Unfortunately, with COVID, I think we've lost our momentum in some of those conversations. And the team's going to need to re-engage with them and see where they are, and maybe their plans have changed. But there's a long list of possibilities here that I think the county could explore. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, really appreciate it, and also Rachel, appreciate the importance of identifying what is next. But one of the things I think it's very important for the TAC to be mindful of, and it's very obvious just from looking what's going on here, a huge number of people involved, huge number of groups involved. What we want to do is find those areas where the TAC's involvement can make a difference, either leveraging existing activities or doing something complementary. We certainly don't want to do something that FCDOT already decides it wants to do, and Tom, obviously, we're working with you and your staff to make sure that's that's the case. So I will never speak for the TAC without having consulted the commissioners, and so I haven't consulted the commissioners, so I won't say what we can do. I know we want to do something, but we want to work very closely with the practitioners here to make sure that we're putting our shoulder in a place where it can have the most effect. We can ask maybe a few more questions. We're a little bit late on the calendar, but this is such an incredible activity here. We do have Dale for maybe like 3 to 5 more minutes, perhaps, if we're lucky. Any questions from commissioners that would like to speak up? Okay.
I've got a question. It looks like Kevin's trying to talk, but I'll defer to Kevin if he had a question.
Why don't you start while you're up, and then Kevin can hop in after you once.
Okay, I was just going to comment on Rachel's question, because I think it's an important one for somebody who lives in Providence, who also lives down the street from Mosaic, and is there often, see kind of the opportunities there. There's lots of people that walk it back and forth between the Metro and Mosaic, Dunloring Metro and Mosaic, and there's a lot of opportunities for development between these two areas. So I see the next phase is building on what is already there. I think that people, residents would be surprised to hear that relay will go away fairly quickly, and that's not something that's always going to be there. And so, so I think understanding what the opportunities are there, that it's, what's that?
Well, some noise in the back, if they could mute, because we can hear you, Jeremy. Thank you. Go ahead, please. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. I see opportunities to build on that. I think there's certainly a need in the Mosaic and Dunloring for this type of activity, and so the opportunities to get the data and to build on it and to to drive economic opportunity in that region is it seems like a great opportunity. But I appreciate all the work that staff is doing. It's I'm looking forward to seeing Relay drive down the street.
Thank you, Kevin. Just like Pete, Kevin, did you have a comment? Sorry.
Yeah, a couple of things quickly. First of all, I didn't know CAV had a union, but congratulations to them for getting Fridays off on this route. And the second area was I've long been a fan of paratransit short distance trips. And, early on I thought, it's smaller bus, smaller cost, but now it always comes back to the labor, the driver. So this really does fascinate me. I don't know if you've had any discussions of what the savings would be over running a manned vehicle when it does become fully autonomous. But that the labor savings obviously are just very intriguing. And then I guess the other, how quickly could this ramp up to Tyson's? I mean, that's always been a question. All right, you get to Tyson's, you want to pull the parking. Why are people going to come from outside Tyson's to go there? But now if you have a relatively cheap form of a what used to be called an easy bus when we had the VRE garage here, I mean, the potential of that is I think is tremendous.
I'll jump in. So regarding the savings over running a manned vehicle, I think eventually, yes, there will be significant savings, but right now it's actually radically more expensive to have an autonomous vehicle than to have a regular bus service. For one thing, we are required by NHTSA to have a safety steward on board at all times. So you do have a person on there. And of course, the technology is expensive. But it's only by experiments like this that we get there. We're branding ourselves as a place for innovation, and this is how it starts. We are definitely a jurisdiction that is in need of this technology. And how quickly it can ramp up to Tyson's, right now, certainly with the easy mod that we're using, the vehicle is not approved to travel at speeds on streets that are posted more than 25 miles per hour. So we would have loved to have done this project in Tyson's, but the speed is just way too fast on those roads right now. And Dale, if you're still on the phone, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add one thing. Our partners at Department of Rail and Public Transportation are in fact very interested in the question that I think was that Kevin that asked about the business model for deploying autonomous versus manned. And I think they're using this project in some way to try to calculate what those savings might be. I would echo your comments about Tyson's. I mean, we looked very closely at Tyson's early on in the planning process, and frankly, sort of the scale of the rights of way. I think to deploy in Tyson's, you probably would need a dedicated lane. And as Etta says, you know, the NHTSA guidance that, you know, anyone that wants to deploy on a public right of way you know, we must follow right now, require, you know, that speed restriction of 25 miles an hour or less. And in fact, the vehicles, just so you know, aren't even traveling close to 25 miles an hour based on the current maturity of this technology. So it's a challenge, but you know, I can tell you that, you know, we have talked to literally hundreds of folks around the country who are watching this technology very closely, some of which are in the same situation that we're in terms of testing. And there's a lot of optimism about, you know, low speed shuttles with passenger capacity between 8 and 15. There's a lot of optimism about there's a niche in the public transit world that these vehicles will be able to fill at some point once this tech is mature and can be deployed on a more robust, you know, deployment. So, you know, I don't want to. I'm not trying to talk for Dwayne or Tom or any of the transit folks, but I'm just relaying to you guys what I'm hearing as I talk to people around the country about low speed shuttles. There's real keen interest in this, and I think because the manufacturers are pursuing these vehicles and manufacturing them, they see there's a real possibility in this market as well.
Congratulations to your
Mr.
team for pulling this off, for something that was well under my radar and I thought was years down the road. So kudos.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Tom.
So just to follow up on that, just to make sure everybody's aware, we are actually operating 3 shuttles in Tysons right now with regular standard buses to get people from the metro to various corners of Tysons and various office buildings and activity centers. So, well, it's not an autonomous shuttle. There are some existing shuttles that are operating, and at the moment they're free, as are all Fairfax Connector service. So, whenever we charge fares again, they will go back to the 50-cent fare that they were before.
Very good.
Thank you. Commissioner Sitnik.
This is long range, but I know I'm excited about the technology, and maybe the cost will be down by the time my area of Fairfax County develops into our community business centers, because one of the concerns was, you know, how do you park and go shopping in these new shopping centers and community centers? And this sort of transportation probably would work out. We also have a lot of historic sites that could be somehow or another networked with this, including the new one at Fort Belvoir. And Fort Belvoir has deep pockets, so maybe they could help pay for some of the cost of developing this program. So just a thought.
Okay.
Yep.
That's a great thought, actually. And we have been coordinating with those folks. The regional commission sponsored actually a shuttle with Ollie. Local Motors is another technology provider at the Joint Base Myers Henderson Hall. And so we have definitely been in close coordination with them. And they are actually interested in perhaps having a shuttle at the new Army Museum. Apparently, it's very far from the parking lot to the museum. So they've been talking about something like that for there.
Oh, very good. But that's where, because I've been over there and there's a lot of walking. So anything to shuttle it would be good. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, well, it's getting a little later. I'm going to try and close down the questions because we do want to try and keep a schedule low. Once again, if there's a commissioner that has a really pressing question, you know, we can entertain it. But since we know we can, you know, drag Etta and other folks back, kicking and screaming if we feel we have to. Dale's foolishly agreed to come talk to us again. We will get another chance to talk to these folks. So you know, so this will be their last chance. But is there any last questions before we allow folks to go on and do things and get with their family obligations before we move on to the next part of the agenda?
I just quickly, back to Tom, I was aware I know we had something there in Tyson's. And maybe long after my service, I'll just be curious as to whether, the cost of ramping up to unmanned would ever be feasible, but we'll have that discussion on another day. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very, 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 very much. A great presentation, a great project. We'll just join the chorus of folks offering our congratulations. I will certainly do my best to try and come on Thursday and look forward to the demonstration and seeing the results. With that, I think we'll move on to the public comment period. And by the way, folks are welcome to stick around if you'd like. I suspect you probably won't. That's okay. As we get into sort of the blocking and tackling and the boring administrative stuff of the TAC there. But before that, the last thing is a public comment period. I don't think we have any members of the public here. If we do and they'd like to speak, can you please identify yourselves and let us know? Okay. I'll take silence as no. Moving on to other business. Very briefly, the status of the bylaws there. We have them prepared. As I mentioned, I believe at the last meeting, what I'd like to do is take them to Chairman Alcorn of the board's Transportation Committee. He'd been ill recently, not available for us to go talk to him. So what I'm trying to do is set up a meeting with myself and Vice Chair Mary Pauline Jones, if she can go as well too, to sort of introduce ourselves, introduce the task to the chairman, give him an opportunity to have a look at the bylaws, see if there's any comments he'd like to make, or some guidance he'd like to share. So may have an opportunity to talk to him briefly offline on the 8th, the board transportation meeting on the 8th of November. If not, then we'll certainly look for an opportunity down the road there. We don't need the bylaws right now to do what we're doing in terms of these activities. We're certainly very mindful of our work plan to come. And so to tell you the truth, I don't think it's necessarily a big deal not having the bylaws ready, but I want to let folks know where we stand right now. The November meeting, right now looking at two topics. And again, I'd like to generally have two topics in the meeting. We're not doing too bad on time here. Targeting about 2.5 hours to meet. We didn't spend too much time on the intro of this meeting, so that was encouraging. But we'd like to be able to keep things moving a little bit here. The curbside management study, which had talked about doing this month here, actually I talked to Henry Stein McCartney, and they're actually not quite finished. They need to brief the Board of Supervisors first. So we tentatively talked about having that in November instead. We'll see if that still happens, but that's the plan. If Deputy County Executive Rachel Flynn is still with us, we wanted to try and get some of her perspectives on making place and some things like that as we plan our assault on the future, so to speak. Rachel, I'll let you speak a little bit if you'd like to offer some perspective, but I will also say, not surprisingly, would invite you and Tom, if I know you're still here too, as we do our offsite, would like to we welcome the chance to hear from both of you about your thoughts about the kind of things you think the TAC should be doing. So Rachel, you don't have to talk about all of that right now, but did just want to mention that we welcome you to come in next month to talk about your making place concept if you're willing to do that.
Great, thanks, Mike. Yeah, what I'd like to talk about is the role that street design and transportation in general plays in connection to land use and economic development, what I call the three-legged stool, and to really look at our streets as the great public spaces that they can be. Some of them are, some aren't necessarily. And how can we maximize those in Fairfax? So I'll be talking about that next month.
Thank you very much for your willingness to do that. And that'll be a full agenda, 2 topics, and the things we're doing, I think is enough to bite off. One of the things we'll talk about as we go forward is our rhythm, how commissioners are feeling about how much we're working on, how to do things and stuff like that. But that's where we're at right now. The next item is sort of the December meeting and the annual holiday dinner. To start about the December 15th meeting first. Well, let me actually talk about them together. In the past, pre-COVID, I think for 3 years now, we've had a holiday dinner that the TAC has sponsored at a restaurant which was not socially distanced. So I don't think we can do an in-person holiday dinner unless we went to a large place and sat a far away and maybe had outdoor heaters or things like that. I would like to have an opportunity for the TAC members to relax a little bit. I know we're spending some time here, these evenings, but it would be nice to sort of just get to know each other a little bit better. We are not allowed to, would not be allowed to talk business, which actually would probably be a good thing. Because once we talk business and we're together, that's a meeting, there's notes, there's notifications, all those sort of things. But we are able to get together and socialize. And so what I was thinking about for December was to have maybe one topic. And I don't know if this will work. And I reached out to Stephen Tarditi, who briefed us back in June on EDA activities, economic development insights from the from the Silver Line, to ask if the Richmond Corridor market assessment would actually be done by then. He talked about maybe having it done by the end of 2020. Not been able to connect with them yet, so there's still a question mark there. But that's what I'm thinking about right now. Right now, we've got a good number of things in the pipeline. We can always talk about what we want to do, although I don't want to just do navel gazing. I think that's what our facilitator work session would be is perfect for. If commissioners, again, I'll mention, have topics they'd like to discuss, please let me know. But the idea here on the 15th is to have one topic, and if not the Richmond Highway topic, then we'll pick another one and have some kind of social activity. Like I hope we could maybe stay on this session here. Maybe at that point take a break, go get your favorite beverage. And something to munch on. Maybe we could get together there. But what do folks think? Is there interest in doing something together here in a socially distanced manner in December, or what do commissioners think?
Mike, you have the same problem in December though. If we did that part of the meeting would still be official and notes have to be taken.
Well, the first part would be official, and what we would do is we would actually close the meeting, we'd adjourn the meeting, and then we'd start having fun.
But you've got everybody, you got more than 3 connected in.
Well, my understanding is that as long as we're not doing business, we can get together, and that has been, but
Tom's going to weigh in.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, we'll need to consult with the county attorney's office on the specifics of that.
Understand. And we did for our meetings previously as well. So, but yeah, we would want to do that. So so the suggestion is sort of like the only option I can think of that we can both be socially distanced and that might pass muster of the county attorney. And before we go to the county attorney, is something we want to do. If we just want to take a pass because it's in the too hard to do category, that's okay. And there's no obligation to get together. I certainly don't want it to be a mandatory formation. And I also don't expect folks to commit yes or no on the spot. We don't need to make that determination yet. But welcome to host some discussion about it right now. And we can certainly go offline as well and talk about it in November as to what we want to do in December. Certainly have time.
Do you know, Mike, do you know how it was done in the past? You said this has been the norm for 3 years. So how was it allowed the last 3 years?
Well, what we did is we had a meeting in a restaurant.
You're right.
But when the meeting was over, there were some folks who would stick around. And I think there were sometimes more than 3 when it was complete. I think the fact that we're going to be doing a WebEx here with documentation of the meeting, want to make sure we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And that alone may be a reason not to use this vehicle here, because, you know, it probably has to be taped. And I don't think you want to tape a social event. What does the county attorney think about that, as Tom points out? But my understanding is that commissioners can get together in groups of more than 3 as long as they are not talking business, and we would do that. We would not talk business.
So,
not a ruse. Yes, Mary.
Mike, I didn't think about this when you and I had talked earlier, but obviously we have the concern about members, there being more than 3 of us after the meeting itself is closed, and then we'd be socializing. But I am wondering, with COVID right now, are we allowed to have, are we allowed to have the meetings in person, period? And I'm not sure that we're allowed to do that yet, regardless.
I would not.
I don't believe we are. I think it's easier for us right now to do this way. We've not asked that question specifically. Can we come back in person? To tell you the truth, it's easier for us, and I think easier for the county not to have to deal with that by having us continue on the remote meeting here. But yeah, I think we could not do a holiday dinner as we've done in the past. Just COVID alone, I think, would keep us from doing that.
I just, in your idea that we could do some of it, it could be a meeting and then we'd adjourn and socialize. My concern is that we could potentially get together and socialize, but I don't think we can have the meeting in person because of COVID.
Oh, absolutely.
But the Board of Supervisors meets in person.
They have that closed, and as far as my understanding is, they have not voted to allow the subcommittees and everything to do that yet, but I could be mistaken on that.
I would just go ahead, Tom.
My suggestion is, we have a conversation with the county attorney between now and your November meeting, and we'll have some more specific guidance for the commission before your November meeting.
Okay.
I just wanted Rachel to know that I believe the previous 3 meetings were official meetings. We did take minutes.
Yep.
And there were some blips that I'll let Tom brief, Rachel on offline, but I don't think they were Tom's favorite type of meeting because of complications that came up. So, and I'll leave it at that.
I mean, I will have to state that, and I had mentioned this to Mike, at least with the restaurant that we were in the previous years, regardless of COVID, I was not a big fan of that because it was not a closed room. And I felt that there were often difficulties of hearing what people were saying when you're spread out across a table in an open restaurant. So that's one view that I had, is separate from COVID. If we're going to do something like that, I felt we should be in a private room.
I will admit that I also, found it difficult to hear and to communicate and things like that. It was not a way to hold a meeting. We need to hold a meeting, to have our meeting. But the other thing I could suggest too is that we don't have to have our social event, whatever we do, if we do something, the day of the meeting. We could, assuming the county attorney allows us to do so, we could say, we can meet somewhere in, on a patio somewhere on a day that's not too bad, and be outside or something like that. So there are other options there, but certainly I don't want to suggest, I won't support doing anything that's not going to be consistent with COVID rules and, of course, the county attorney. Let's generate some options there, Tom. Agree, and thanks for the suggestion about talking to the county attorney, seeing what kinds of things we can do there. At the November meeting, we'll talk more, but please, commissioners, be thinking about whether you'd like to get together, how you'd like to get together, and things like that, and we'll talk about it again on the November meeting.
Hey, Mike, if I could just back up for a second on next month's meeting, are you double booking Rachel with another meeting?
I wouldn't say double booking. She would be here twice in a row, but you heard her. That was actually her, and not a deep fake. She's happy to come next month, and we're happy to have her.
I mean, I just didn't want to. I assume she would be up first, and then the other meeting would be after. I don't. It just sounds like a lot for one meeting, in my opinion.
Yes, as I said, I'd like to be able to have 2 topics. If, you know, and quite honestly, if we realized the Dale's schedule was what it was, we could have switched the order there. We can certainly look at switching the order in November. And there's a chance we don't do the curbside management study. There, you know, there's some of its factors, the situation, its own situation might prevent that. But one of the reasons I have the curbside management first is it'll be talking about the results of curbside management. And here's Rachel talking about street design. So I think it'd be helpful to have the curbside management study fresh in our mind as we then talk about making plays.
All right, well, if it works on her schedule, I'm game. I just didn't want to, you know, it's rare to get the deputy county executive there. We've had her before and she's been welcome, and I didn't want to shortchange her time in any way.
I appreciate that. Appreciate we want to be respectful of everybody's time, but yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thank
Kev.
you.
Yep. I think it'll be okay, but I appreciate you mentioning that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item of business here is the TAC award, and I am looking now at the folks who are still here. If there's anybody still left from the relay team, because what I'd like to suggest, I'm just going to sort of cut to the chase, is that perhaps the relay team ought to be the recipient of this year's TAC award for excellence in transportation accomplishments. We, you know, in the past, we've solicited for nominations. We've had some great winners. Interestingly, they've been invited to come to our dinner. That probably won't work this year. But I'd be hard pressed to think of some other group that's had quite the accomplishment that the relay team has had here. I'm not asking for a decision right now, but what I'm suggesting is we need to make a decision on what we're going to do. We could convene a committee of 2 to look at this, or we can discuss it now a little bit and maybe make a determination of our own in the November meeting. What's the view of the commissioners here? How do you feel about the process, and more importantly, how do you feel about perhaps relay being that recipient?
Mike, this is Pete. I think the relay team work is groundbreaking and would be an excellent candidate for an award. I think the others you could mention, but that one kind of stands heads and shoulders above them now.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
Mike?
Yes.
So, yeah, I would say that would be hard to beat. But if you will recall, and I'm not changing direction here, but we talked about the former chairman, and I don't know if there's any recognition that would be left in any way for him.
Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we did talk about that, and that's appropriate as well too. What I was thinking about was perhaps a Lifetime Achievement Award, because if I'm not mistaken, I think we did that last year when Leonard retired. I think we gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award. That might be an appropriate thing as well. But you're right to bring this up, and that's exactly the kind of decision we've got there. You know, I'll also point out that we have other commissioners that have retired, none with the TAC pedigree, obviously, as our chairman. You know, we've got some letters. We know we need to send them. You know, but yes, I think the big question related to here is what we want to do to honor Jeff for his service with the TAC for so many years.
Yeah, maybe that's the answer, because it is hard to envision everything that this relay team has done this year and to have them wait another year. I mean, it does seem like the time is now to recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is Linda. I really like the idea of honoring the relay team, as well as finding a way to, you know, whether it's a Lifetime Achievement Award for our former chair. You know, he led the committee commission for so long, that I think acknowledgement would be wonderful. Well deserved.
Thank you.
I agree.
Okay.
Mike, I
Yes.
have I have letters for JR and for Jeff. I'm going to forward them to you for your signature.
Okay, appreciate that.
I second the third or fourth, the idea of giving the award this year to the relay team. This is it's really pretty groundbreaking work.
Okay.
So I think that would be a very good idea.
Okay, thank you. Any other opinions?
I don't have an opinion. I was just going to ask, when
Sure.
is the award announced?
We've announced it late in the year usually. In fact, I think last year was pretty close to the dinner. So we're in about that same time frame. We give the award for the year. It's October, so announcing December is about right. It's also something that we can look at next year if we want to change the schedule or the process or things like that. I think with a lot of the things we'll be doing, we will meet a lot of people. We'll probably have some hard choice next year to try and look at this. And so as we get presentations from folks and see what they're doing, please keep in the back of your mind, should this be the winner of the TAC award? Because we definitely want to highlight and honor those folks who've done some very good work. One thing I wanted to add about perhaps lifetime achievement and perhaps recognizing other commissioners, one thing we can consider doing if we decide to do a social event, however we decide to do a social event, again, if we're allowed to do a social event, we can invite our retired TAC members, Jeff and JD and Jennifer Joy Madden and others to come join us for a social event as well. That might be a good opportunity to present the letters and really appreciate folks for their service. I throw that out as another option, perhaps, and a consideration for perhaps having that social event for ourselves here later this year.
I think that's excellent, as long as it's not virtual, but I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Well, we may be forced to be virtual. I've done Zoom or whatever of happy hours. They're not that bad, but if we can find out a way to do it in person, again, if we're authorized, then I would prefer it certainly. But that's something we'll definitely want to talk about with the TAC members next month, because some of this is just obviously your individual comfort levels with COVID protocols and things like that, what you're willing to do and what kind of procedures we would need to adopt ourselves as fellow human beings who don't want to get sick and die. So, okay. Well, what we'll do then, Roger, we'll appreciate having the letters. Look forward to looking at those. What I'll do is hold them for now. Linda, I know you've made the comment that Jeff is pining away, missing us desperately. Word can get back to him informally that we haven't forgotten him, we will take those letters and find an appropriate way to give them to them. I think it'd be nice to have some kind of event, some kind of recognition, however we want to do it. Okay. Well, I tell you what, we're to the last item on the agenda, and that is to call upon each commissioner to say something. So it's been a long night, but I think another productive one. And so I'll go through the list here. In fact, what I think I'll do is I'll go ahead and call on you. I'll use my little list here. If you've got something to say, please keep it brief. Although if you got to go over it, we can do it. Starting off, Linda Sperling, do you have anything that you'd like to add to the meeting?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Next is Kevin. Anything?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, Alexis. Any comments? Hopefully you don't recall an order from your first meeting. You'll come back for the second one.
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, Alexis. Roger?
I'll pass.
No? Okay. Pete, I know there was one little thing I think you wanted to bring up, if you still do. Pete?
I do, and I apologize because it is late, but at the last meeting we had we talked about the possibility of doing a liaison with the Trails, Sidewalks, and Bikeways Committee. It did reach out to that committee, and they are interested in doing just that. In fact, at their meeting, they voted in concept to do that. And they appointed Jim Klein as at least their temporary liaison to us, to TAC. And they had some details they want to work out, but they really like the idea. And this all happened, by the way, after my supervisor, Dan Stork, enthusiastically embraced the idea, and in fact thought it was a great idea for all the backs and groups to start working close together. So I don't know what we need to do with it beyond this, but if conceptually it's okay for me to work it with Jim and their committee, I will. If not, you guys can give me guidance and I'll follow it.
Everybody's an independent commissioner, but appreciate you coming to compare notes with us. Absolutely want to encourage more interplay and exchanges with other commissions and things like that. And appreciate very much your leadership in stepping up and laying the groundwork there. One thing I like to do though is I want commissioners to be able to participate in any of these activities they want. We can designate other liaisons in other areas as we need to, as they arise and things like that. I made the point a little earlier in a couple contexts, but also in the beginning when we talked about this. If we've got two commissioners, they can you can sort of research buddies there. You can go off and you can do things. You can go talk to in this case perhaps the Trails and Sidewalk Committee. Go do things. You don't have to do a meeting. We'd like to hear what's going on. Please report and things like that. If we've got three, now it's a meeting. Now it's an announcement. What I'd like to do is allow other commissioners the opportunity to raise their hand either now if they're interested or later on to be that second. If there's three commissioners that really want to be involved in trail and sidewalk, we can work that out as well too. But Pete, I think that given what you've done, it makes perfect sense to have you be the lead liaison to the trails and sidewalks. I don't think we necessarily need to designate. I think the chair can make that call. However, I also want to be respectful of other commissioners. So what I'd like to do is sort of give you a tentative assignment there, and then have other, and so other commissioners can say if they'd like to be involved, things like that. Talk about the structure a little bit. Don't worry, this won't end up with you not doing it and somebody else, coming in and elbowing you to the side. We're not going to do that. But what we do is whatever the structure is we'd like to do, we can sort of talk about that at the time. But again, appreciate your leadership and willingness, and anybody wants to comment now, please let me step back and allow that.
I just have one comment on that. I think it's great, Pete. Yep. I think it's great, Pete, to be the liaison. I'm 100% behind that. As a matter of transparency, some of you may know I'm also on the Fairfax Alliance for Better Bicycling's board of directors, and we have one of our other directors is a representative on the TSB, and he briefs us as well on what's going on at the monthly meetings. And I have, I think, once gone in his place when he couldn't make it. So happy to serve as a backup, Pete, or to discuss any issues if you'd like that come out of that. So just as a heads up.
Works for me.
That's exactly what I wanted to do, and I will also run the risk of outing Jeremy a little bit, who's the next one we're going to ask if there's any comments. Not that he necessarily would want to do this or wouldn't, whatever, but I know it's obviously Jeremy is the one, as I acknowledged, who brought the active Fairfax plan to my attention, and that's very much appreciated. We might have a situation where we've got more than two commissioners that are interested. Again, I'm not presuming. But I don't know how much we're going to do with the bikes committee, but I think it will be well represented, and that bond will be tight, and that's a good thing. But if I could,
yeah, I'm happy to help out. I don't necessarily need to attend more meetings. I'm in meeting town, but obviously it's something I care deeply about and within our community. And as Active Fairfax gets going, I think there's plenty of opportunities for all of us to weigh in there.
Exactly, and that's part of the offsite conversation eventually is the kinds of things we want to do, and with a level of specificity that we can, complement each other's efforts, because I talk a lot about making sure we're complementing the county and things like that, and of course we want to do that, but also we don't want to trot on each other's toes as well too, and we'll just have to talk and we can do that. So what I hear emerging is Pete and Alexis with Jeremy cheering from the sidelines and, on call if need be, as Alexis is also. That can be enough for now, but I certainly obviously wanted everybody to know what's going on. And Pete, thanks again for your leadership and raising this.
Appreciate it. It's been fun already. I actually testified on their behalf in on one thing about trails down near the new Alpine X facility in South County. I did that as an individual, not from the TAC, but they're just trying to get the trails in that area completed, and they see it as a good opportunity. So it made sense to me.
Well, perfect. And obviously, if there's something that you see, the two of you see, the three of you see, that you think need the TAC ought to have a look at, bring it to our attention. We'll put it on the agenda. And if we need some TAC involvement, we're happy to take that up and have the TAC discuss it, obviously.
I think that there's also the opportunity to I think bikes and trails, so they're mostly focused on the infrastructure piece of it. And I think that there's an opportunity for us to look at, the roadways and how do we make, we can't, there's not funding for sidewalks, but so, we're left with the roads, and how do we make the roads safer and make sure that there's an appropriate balance between vehicles and pedestrians, particularly as we become more urbanized. If we can't fund sidewalks, then we need to figure out other ways to do it.
Jeremy,
and go ahead, sorry.
Jeremy, we're on the same page because I've chatted with Tom while he was on here talking about changing LOS, level of service that VDOT uses to a more multimodal system. And that would take into effect the way pedestrians and bicyclists and everything else. So we're on the same page. So we'll be there.
Well, and also what I want to just add in was, talking about making place, and Pete, I know you've talked to Rachel about that. I've talked a little bit. She talked to us a little bit, and she'll talk to us more next month. But that's about road design as well too. So Jeremy, absolutely, I think that's right, and that's a good example of sort of taking a big issue and looking at it from different perspectives. That when you put together, we can hopefully put the pieces together and stuff like that. So we'll be able to talk about that after the conversation with Rachel. As you can tell, she wants us to do things and wants us to dive into things. That's great. We've got some good support for her, which comes with some expectations, and that's okay. That's okay. So we'll talk after the making place there, the kind of things we think we ought to do to help make some of those things happen.
Mr. Chairman?
Sorry, Jeremy, do you have any other comments? Just a comment.
This is Calvin.
Yes.
I can start sharing the agenda and minutes from the Trail and Sidewalk Committee. I think they're meeting like weeks after us, so we can start sharing our agenda and minutes with them.
Sure, that's a very good idea. Very good idea. And whatever they give you, and in fact, it sounds like Pete's probably gonna, there's a line of this sort of stuff already. Let's use that relationship there and build a stronger one. And look for the next groups that we're gonna partner up with, not party up with, partner up with later. Maybe party with them, but partner first.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
All right, Jeremy, did you have any other comments you wanted to add, sort of commissioner remarks as we go around the horn last?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Appreciate it. Eric, how about you?
Thank you.
No, I think that's nothing. I see you muted. So David still not with us this evening. Look forward hopefully next month. And that actually appropriately leaves our vice chair. Mary Pauline, any comments? You're the last one standing between us and adjournment.
I know better than to stand in between that. I think I'm good for this evening.
Fantastic. I'm enjoying these meetings. I hope you are too. We'll talk about what you like and don't like about it as we go forward. Thanks for your participation. If somebody has a last minute comeback, I think it's thank you for here, and let's call the meeting adjourned at 10:23 p.m.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Good night.
So long.
Great meeting.
Thank you. Yes, I agree.
All right, how do I get out?
Has left the meeting. Hit the red X.
There you go.
Oh,
And
this
that
is
was-
an event. Okay.